Hello everyone, welcome to Classic Readings of Chinese and English Literature. I'm Ruo Qianpu from the College of Foreign Studies of Jilan University.
And I am James, a guest teacher in the College of Foreign Studies at Jinan University.
Is Ponce Cassé an English translation of classical Chinese poetry or a collection of modern poetry? Before making a judgment, a detailed examination of Ponce's translations should be taken. Let's have a close reading of the following poems. I would like to recite the original Chinese poem before we analyze Ponce's creative translation. The first one, 古诗诗九首其二，青青河畔草，郁郁园中柳。盈盈楼上女，娇娇当窗游。娥娥红粉妆，纤纤出素手。昔为昌家女，今为荡子户。荡子行不归，空床难独守。An accurate literal translation of the poem would produce something like this by Burton Watson. Green, green riverbank grasses, thick, thick willows in the garden. Plump, plump that lady upstairs, bright, bright before the window. Lovely, lovely her red face powder. Slim, slim, she puts out a white hand. Once I was a singing house girl, now the wife of a wanderer who never comes home, is hard sleeping in an empty bed alone. James, could you please read Ponce's version?
I'd be delighted to. It reads thus. The beautiful toilet. Blue. Blue is the grass about the river, and the willows have overfilled the close garden. And within, the mistress, in the midmost of her youth, white, white of face, hesitates, passing the door. Slender, she puts forth a slender hand, and she was a courtesan in the old days, and she has married a sot, who now goes drunkenly out and leaves her too much alone.
Thank you so much, James.
You're welcome.
In this poem, the central character is a young woman plagued with sadness because she marries a drunkard and he often leaves her alone. Ponce's poem clearly begins with a translation of words from one language to another. Blue, blue is a direct translation of the Chinese 青青. The word 青 can also mean green, black, young, grass, or unripe crops. No matter what word Ponce chooses to begin his translation, it fails to incorporate these important meanings. After all, the poem discusses a young girl that may be unripe, a crop reaped by the drunkard before she should have been. These intricacies of the original color word here lose whatever descriptive or metaphorical relations they would have signified within their native language and the cultural zeitgeist. Instead, Ponce provides us with a subtle blue, which carries an emotional connotation of sadness that resurfaces in the poem's conclusion. James, could you tell us more?
Sure. Although he alters a few key elements of the poem, he picks up on an irony that is central to it. Despite these images of youth, fullness, and beauty, the central character is plagued with sadness and removed from her lover. Even though no other prominent translation of the poem has construed 青 to mean blue, Pound has utilized the flexibility afforded to him by Fenello's Crib in order to sound an emotional undertone that signals the central irony of the poem. Not to mention, he does all of this within a cultural zeitgeist that is foreign to the original Chinese.
And now, let's read and analyze another poem from Cassé. I will read the Chinese and you will read the English version. 玉阶院，玉阶生柏露，夜久青罗袜， 却下水晶帘，玲珑望秋月. James, please.
Thank you. Pound's version reads thus: The jewel-stared grievance. The jewelled steps are already quite white with dew. It is so late that the dew soaks my gauze stockings. And I let down the crystal curtain and watch the moon through the clear autumn.
Thank you, James. The subject of the poem is that one of the court ladies is waiting in vain for the Lord to come. The beauty of the poem lies in the fact that not a single character is used to express the idea of waiting and resenting. Yet the poem is full of that idea. Thinking that the Lord will come, she was coming out to meet him at the entrance. A flight of steps ornamented with jewels. She is standing there until the very dewless of light wets her stockings. She lets down her curtain already, despairing of his coming. And yet, she can see the moon shining so brightly outside, and has to think of the possibility of the Lord's still coming, because it is so fine a light. And yet, she can see the moon shining so brightly outside, and has to think of the possibility of the Lord's still coming, because it is so fine a light. And so spends the whole night awake. Here, jewelry stares, therefore a palace. Grievance, therefore there's something to complain about. Gauze stockings, therefore a court lady, not a servant who complains. Clear autumn, therefore he has no excuse on account of the weather. Also, she has come early, for the dew has not merely whitened the stairs, but has soaked her stockings. The poem is especially prized because the court lady utters no direct reproach. James, can you see that point?
Yes. In this poem, Pound retains the narrative perspective of the original version. It is still presented as a female monologue in his translation. Furthermore, the tone of the narrator is also close to the original in that she is describing the environment and events without revealing any grievance. The iconic images jeweled steps, dew, and crystal curtain are faithfully retained. However, the image autumn moon is translated into watching the moon through the clear autumn. This change induces a loss of meaning of the original, as autumn moon usually conveys the feeling of missing something or someone in classical Chinese poetry. The slight deviation from the Chinese version could be because of Pound's lack of knowledge of Chinese, or it could be intentional. However, Pound provides a reasonable account of his translation. Clear autumn, therefore, he has no excuse on account of the weather. A combination of faithful translation and explanatory notes seems like an acceptable way to convey classical Chinese poetry into another language.
Therefore, despite the controversies, the current discussion is based on Wilson's comments on Casey. It is at once an important collection of English poetry and a significant work of English translation of Chinese poems. And we may quote T.S. Eliot to end our discussion today. Pound is the inventor of Chinese poetry for our time. And that is the end of this chapter. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.